All right, we're ready to configure. Are you? Of course you are. Now we know how to navigate through the iOS. So the first thing that we're going to learn to configure is what they call administrative configuration, or as I like to call it, basic housekeeping, which I'm going to give you more than what you actually need, as usual. So we're going to develop a little topology, which you've learned earlier, how to connect routers and stuff, navigating to the packet tracer and all that. So what we're going to do is we'll make it simple. We'll do 2 routers, all right? We'll put 2 switches. We're not going to configure the switches. Well, will we? Will we? Yeah, we probably will. We'll do the routers. We'll put 2 switches. No, we won't. We'll put 2 switches, and then we'll go ahead and put 2 PCs. And we're going to do the administrative configurations of them only. All right? The administrative configurations of them only, and I will explain each command as I go through it. So we're going to go ahead and go through the 1841. And some of you, as we do this, they'll be saying, man, we don't do this at work. We don't have to do all this stuff. You're taking a certification. Guess what? You better know it. When you go to your job, then you can do whatever you want. Then you'll be CCNA certified. Then you'll get that extra raise. Then you'll be the man or the woman. But if you don't get that certification, you'll just be the tech. All right? So you need the certification. You want the certification. So pay attention to the certification. All right, we're going to use straight through cable from PC to switch. And the reason and how I plug things in, ladies and gentlemen, there is a method to the madness, please. I plug it in a certain way. Because then sometimes I get emails back. People say, look, I did exactly like you did. It's not working. And then I look at the lab. It's not exactly like I did it. And that's why it's not working. Okay, so please, if you're going to replicate these labs, do it exactly as I do it. And plug it into the proper ports. All right, which when you send it back to me, it will be easier to troubleshoot. All right, that's the same thing I do in the classroom. Everybody plugs in everything to the exact same ports. So if I have 30 students, I don't have to look at 30 different configurations. Just gotta look at one type of configuration. Now, does it mean that you always have to do it this way? Of course not. Once you get out there, you can do however you want to do it. But in the classroom, this is how you do it. All right, to make it easier on me. All right, and for you to understand the concept, because that's what you're learning. Now, between routers, we're going to emulate, we're going to use a WIC 2T. And just so you know, the difference between a WIC 1T and a WIC 2T, the WIC 2T, they call it the smart serial. The author doesn't even know what they call the smart serial, but hey, it's called the smart serial. It has 2 more ports. Instead of having just one huge 60-pin port, it has 2 ports. Bandwidth is a lot more. Definitely the connectors or the cable that goes to it, it's going to be completely different. So in the real world, when you are purchasing WIC cards, make sure you make the distinction between WIC 1T and WIC 2T. Okay, because your serial cables will be completely different. All right, so we're going to use WIC 2Ts and we're going to put it on slot 0. Slot 0. They're not hot swappable. They're not hot swappable. So make sure you turn off the router when you're putting in these cards. Close. Labs, why are you using WIC 2Ts? Because I like to. That's all. Okay. Alrighty then. And now I'm going to go ahead and get the DCE cable and put it on the 000 and then plug it into the here and put the S01. Alrighty then. We're creating our little topology. Look at that. How cool. Alright, we got a little topology there. Now I'm going to give you a little review. How many broadcast domains and collision domains do we have? Quickly, come on. I know you know. I know you know. I think I heard somebody say it. I think you're right. I mean, if I heard you correctly, you have 1 broadcast domain, 2 broadcast domain, 3 broadcast domains. Very good, very good. How many collision domains do you have? 1, 2, 3. 4, 5. Because each port on a router, right? Each port on a router is a collision domain. So you got 1, 2, and you have 3, 4, 5. Broadcast domains, right? 1, 2, and then 3. Let me move this. I think it doesn't like my finger anymore. It's mad at me. Move it over this way. Okay. So now we're going to put the IP scheme. Oh no. Yes, the dreaded IP. All right. So we're going to use a 10. Did I zoom in all the way? There you go. Because you may be able to see it, but you know me. I can barely see it, and I'm standing right in front of it. All right. So we got a little basic network going on here. We got the CIDR 30, which gives us 2 IP addresses on the top, router to router. Then we're going to just pick a random here, 192.168.1. That's not 68, that's 38. 68.1.0/24. Default class C mask. That's why we have a class C address. Just copy that. And then you just go in there and change that to a 2. So we have our basic setup, right? The first things that I like to do, because eventually we're going to make this lab grow, we're going to go ahead and put the IP addresses on the computers. Now, before we do, I have my own little standard. I know that Microsoft had its standard for assigning IPs, and I'm sure Cisco has its standard for assigning IPs, and I'm sure everybody in the world has their standard for assigning IPs. I like to use the first available IP address for the host and the last available IP address for the gateway. So please do it that way. Okay? Why do I do it that way? Visualization purposes. Visualization. Once I see a 1.254 and I remember, oh, the last available is the gateway. So I already know that right off the bat. Make it simple on my brain. Doesn't have to think that much, that I know what IP address is what, because you do need not only documentation, but you need to be aware of the scheme that you're using for your particular topology. All right. So we're going to go to PC0. All right. And we're not going into our routers yet. We're just getting things ready. All right. Go to IP configuration. We're going to put the IP address. Can you see that? Let me move that way. Oh, wrong way. There we go. And this is 1.0, so 192.168.1.1. Tab, just going to put a default there, so tab again. 192.168.1.254. So here we got 1.1 for the IP address of the host. We got a default 255.255.255.0, and we have a 192.168.1.254 for the gateway. So we got that going. Let's go ahead and do that on the second PC. Same thing, except this is going to be 2.1 and 2.254. Pretty simple, nothing major. And make sure, am I moving it the right way? Oh, no, that way. Okay. Go to the IP configuration. 192.168.1.1. Tab. Why tab? Because it puts in the default anyway. That's what we're using. 192.168. Oh, you see, you guys didn't warn me. You guys got to tell me these things. It's 2.1. See, you're not telling me. You got to let me know. 192.168.2.254. All right. So we got the IPs and the gateways for the PCs. That's wonderful. Now all we're going to do is, like I said, the basic housekeeping on the actual routers. Now, router 1 here, the name it's router 1 and there's router 2, so that's what we'll call it. So we don't have any confusions. Now, pay attention with the packet tracer that you have a little clock right there. That's your DCE portion of the, once we get into the interfaces, that's where you put your clock rate. You see a little clock, you put the clock rates, okay? No clock rate, you're gonna get a layer 2 issue. What's layer 2? Right, the data link layer. Encapsulation, CRC frames, right? You have, if you get CRC frames, you have mismatch and duplex speeds, all right? But normally they'll be asking you have no clocking. You're not receiving any clocking, all right? So if you have internal CSU, DSUs, or you're providing clocking for your particular routers, then you need to make sure you put in a clock rate. And it's the cable that's going to decide, all right, which is the DC. If you're using serial cables, these are crossover serial cables. One side is DC, one side is DT. The pins will determine which is which. Okay, do you need to get into that granularity of it? No. If you go into a real world, do you need to look at the pin? Okay, I think it's pin 20. No. All right, because that would freak me out when I was in the A+. You have this huge thing and pin, it's like 50 or 100 pins, and you have to know each one of those pins. It's crazy. But here, no, it says, hey, there's the DC side. There's the DTE side. And all routers by default are DTE. It's really your provider that does the clocking for you. But anyway, I digress. Let's go inside router 1. And I'll move it that way so you guys can see. All right. So we booted up the router, and obviously, let me get out your way a little bit more here so you can see good. All right. There we're going to always say no. We're always going to say no. Laz, why do we always say no? Because you don't want to run through the wizard. You can do it yourself from scratch. It really doesn't take that much longer. Okay? Or if you want to just ask questions, type setup again. You get right back into setup mode. But we're not going to do things in setup mode. We're going to do things from scratch. Navigation, enable. Now we're in privilege mode, config T. Now we're in global configuration mode. Now we type host name, not host, but host. The host name cannot have any spaces. No spaces whatsoever. Okay, you can use underscores, but you can't use spaces. So I'm just going to call this R1. Very simple, very straight to the point. Now we're going to start securing. As you can see, when I typed enable and it took me directly to privilege mode. We don't want that. So we're going to secure it. We're going to go enable. And be careful if you're typing in capital or lowercase or you're trying to use proper grammar. All right, you better make sure you know what these passwords are, or if not, you're going to have a world of hurt on top of you. All right, enable password Cisco. Enable secret. Okay, I'm kind of cockeyed, that's why I can't. Secret student. Both of these passwords, and I'll bring them up so you can see that. Both of these passwords are both called privilege mode passwords. What does that mean? Then when you type enable, it takes you to privilege mode. So they're privilege mode passwords. So a question should come to your head. It's like, Laz, why are you then typing 2 separate passwords? And believe me, I've asked that question has been asked to me a million times. And I got the answer for that. There's 2 of them. One, you need to know it for your certification. They're going to ask you. All right? So you need to know it. And 2, as your book states and you've read, that if you need to go to an older iOS, I believe is under 12, 11 something, okay? I don't remember the exact number. If you need to go into an older iOS that does not support the secret syntax, at least you'll have a plain text password, because secret means that it's encrypting. The actual password is student. That is encrypting the word student using an MD5 hash, where this one is just plain text Cisco. But again, if you have to go back to an older iOS, that's why you're typing both. Now the reality of it, all right, when you're in the field, normally when you log in, it's going to be prompting you for a username and password. And that username and password, it is being connected or being grabbed from an Active Directory or domain controller. So your Windows username and password is what's actually going to give you that access. And normally, if you are working with the routers, you'll have a very high privilege where you're able to do whatever you need to do on the router. Unless you work for certain companies, then you pretty much do nothing on the routers. Okay? But it all depends who you work for. But you need to know these two, and that these two are privileged mode passwords, and the secret password will always override the plain text. Sounds kind of silly to type both, and it is. All right, but again, testing purposes, you have to know the difference between one or the other. All right, and remember, the secret password will use MD5 hash, very big. Uppercase, lowercase letters, numbers, and symbols, something this big. Okay? Cool. The next thing that we want to do, service, password, can't type today, password, hyphen, encryption. What does that do? Service password hyphen encryption encrypts all plain text passwords, past, present, and future. So any plain text password that I just typed, the Cisco password is in plain text. Once we do the show run or show start, you will see that that is encrypted already. Right? Because that command right there encrypts it. So no big deal. Now, we want to create usernames. We want to create a username with certain level of privilege. Now, I'm going to create a username for myself, and I want to have administrative privileges. So the way you do that is through levels. Are you going to be asked this on the test? No. This is extra information that I'm giving you. All right? So if you want to create a local username for the router, username, in my case, LDias. You can type whatever you want, Bob Smith. All right? LDias. Privilege. Now I'm going to tab, because for whatever reason I have forgotten, for the most part, my spelling. So I tab over. Username, LDias, privilege. Now you're looking for a level. It's 1 through 15. 1, you pretty much can't do anything. 15, you are the administrator. So 15. And then you're going to put in password. 0, which means the password that you're about to put is going to be in plain text. But do you really care? Because you have that service password hyphen encryption, because there you either put 0 or 7. So it's going to use the same type of encryption, 7. So service password hyphen encryption uses 7 as well. So that will be encrypted also. Now, after that, we're going to type a banner. Will you get tested on the banner? Yes, and I will show you how they will test you on the banner. All right, what banner will you be tested? The message of the day banner. And you need to pick a particular delimiting character, a symbol. And whatever symbol you start with, you must end with. And you cannot use that symbol within the body of the message. So I usually put in welcome to R1, which is not the reality of what you're going to see. All right. And then finish it with the pound sign. Now, how would they test you? They will tell you, okay, instead of saying welcome to R1, they'll say if you need help, call the help desk, number, pound sign, 555, and then space, and end it with a pound sign. Well, the message really ended, call number, pound sign. That ended the message. Nobody saw that it was 5555 because you ended it at that point. So you cannot use the same symbol that you start with and end with within the body of the message. So if you want to use an ampersand, you want to use the, I don't know, what's the other side? Ampersand, dollar sign, that'll be a pretty cool one, percent sign. So there's certain symbols that you can't use, and your router will let you know. All right, but for the symbols that, for the most part, I've used ampersands, I've used the little caret symbol, I've used the, obviously the pound sign, or the dollar sign. Use one of those. If you start with those, you end with those. And the message goes in between. All right, that's your message of the day, and that is how they will try and trip you up. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do, now this is something that normally people turn off, which is name resolution. Name resolution. Okay? We're going to turn that on. IP domain hyphen lookup. It's already on by default. I really didn't have to type that command, but I'm just typing it so I can show you if it is off, how would you turn it on? IP domain lookup. Then you will go IP domain hyphen name. Right? And obviously we're going to put cisco.com. I mean, yeah, number one here. All right, and then you're going to put the IP address, right? IP name, which server you're going to point it to. And we'll use something in the one network, 192.168.1.2, right? So you're now pointing it to a particular DNS server. And why do you want to do this? Let's say you want to ping or trace, or you want to telnet or SSH, whatever the case may be, and you want to use names instead of IP addresses. You can do that, but obviously you need to set up host A records, right? You set up a domain on a DNS server, and then you create host records associated with that domain, which is the IP address and the name of the router. All right, and you can do up to 8 IP addresses per router associated with that particular host name. All right, so that's what that's for. So we created a host name, we've created banners, we created passwords, we've turned up domain lookup. Now, everybody telnets. Everybody telnets. Telnets, though, really, it's not secure because it's plain text. So what we want to do is set up SSH. So when we set up SSH, that means we're using some encrypted connection, right? So we set up some sort of keys. Now, in order to set up these keys, there are requirements. You have to have a host name, and you have to have a domain name. Those are the 2 key requirements in order to create these keys, these RSA keys. And this is how you set that up. Will they ask you about this? No, but now you know. Crypto, key generate, RSA, and you got to hit enter here. And it's going to ask you what size do you want. I'm going to just choose the default 512. The bigger you do it, the slower it will become, because remember, it's using a higher key to encrypt everything, so it's going to take a while to do it. So just leave it at the default 512. At least you know how to set this up. Okay, am I missing something here? Am I missing something? Did the username, banners, service, IP domain lookup? I don't think I'm missing anything. I don't think so. All right. Now we're going to go into the lines. The lines. Okay, so we're going to go line, con 0. And you're going to see what's going to happen. Boom. It's going to tell me what version of SSH. And it's telling me if you're using a different SSH, it will be at this, this level of key, use 768. So we're going to go ahead and do SSH 1.5 and what have you. It's a little information, logging information. So when we get to the IP services chapter, you know what you'll be looking at. So we're going to do password, Cisco. But instead of just doing login, which is what the book asks you to do, and what in the certification, they're not going to ask you, but just in case they do, it's just login. You're going to do login local. Why? Because you want to be able, by typing in login local, you're telling the router, hey, prompt me not only for a password, but for a username. So now the person will be prompted for a username and password if they're going through the console line. All right? And then we're going to do, we're not done there yet. We're going to do exec hyphen timeout 0 What does that mean? 0 minutes, 0 seconds. So the first number is minutes. The second number is seconds. Okay? So I put 00 because I never want to be timed out. You may want to do that in the real world. You can put 10 minutes, 0 seconds, 15 minutes, 0 seconds, whatever it is that you want to do. Just remember, if you're leaving the telecommunications closet, log out of your router, or at least lock the computer that goes into the router. But you may want to log out of the router anyway, okay? And definitely don't leave the door open or what have you. Make sure these are secure doors. So physical security is one of the first things, and definitely you don't leave your station with, wide open. you log out or you lock it. Okay? The next command, login, too many G's there. Login synchronous. Okay? What does that do? I call that the nuisance command. Because your router, as you saw when I went to the line console, that the SSH, I got some logging information from the console. It gave me some info. That'll interrupt your typing. So if I would have been typing, half of it would have been up here, the other half would have been down here. If you have login synchronous, the information is still going to come up, but your typing will stay in the same line. So that's a cool command to type because it'll do that. It'll keep your typing in one line. So we've done our console, but we're not done because we need to do our VTY lines, right? Which is our virtual terminal lines. The lines that we telnet or SSH. We are setting up for SSH, so we're going to tell it, hey, I'm going to show you how to do both. Okay? So we're going to do line VTY 0 space 15. If you didn't know, you type question mark after the 0, it'll tell you how many lines you have. But you can open as many lines as you want. You can open up one line, you can open up two lines, you can open up the default 0 to 4, you can open up as many lines as you want. This is just all the lines that this router has. So I open up all the lines. And then I put password Cisco. And the only reason I use Cisco for everything, so my brain is so fried so I don't forget. All right, then I do the same thing. Login, local, right? So I have to type in a username and password. Exec hyphen timeout because it's a different line, right? If I create a session and you say, hey, Laz, you didn't type timeout, you typed time. Yeah, because the router knows. The router knows exactly what I wanted to type. So it understands that really that means timeout. Because that's the only command that exists that's going to have the timeout. So if even I put just the abbreviated portion of it, it'll understand. And then login synchronous. I'm going to tab right here and it'll finish it for me. So you're saying, Laz, you're typing the same commands over and over again on different lines? Yeah, because you can be consoling in or you can be SSHing in. So you want those configurations there. I'm not going to do the auxiliary, just an overkill, but you would do the same thing there, the same commands. All right. So these are our administrative commands. Let's test them out. Right. Let's first of all, let's copy them. Exit, copy, run, start, enter, and it's going to ask you, do you want to copy it to the startup configuration file? Yes, you do. And since it's in bracket, that's the only file is there, you hit enter. And then you want to look at it. And one of these last lectures, but I'll show you a lot more show commands. There's one show command that you look, and you do a show start, and there you go. There's the service password hyphen encryption, the host name. Take a look at the enable secret, right? That 5 right there, that's the MD5. And you see here is using 7. This is Cisco that I put in plain text, but the source password hyphen encryption is encrypting it. And take a look at my password for the username. It's also encrypting it, right? This wasn't encrypted. This wasn't 7. I put 0. Who encrypted it? The source password encryption. So if they ask you a question, who is stronger? Who has stronger encryption? Is it the source password hyphen encryption? Or is it the enable secret? The enable secret. Look at that. Compared to that. So the enable secret has a higher encryption than the source password hyphen encryption. Remember that. There's your username. There's the version of SSH that we're using. Okay, we haven't done the interfaces. That'll be in the next lesson. There's our banners. There's our line con. There's our VTYs. Awesome. But let's test it out. Let's exit out of the router. Right? We're going to hit enter. Boom. Username. And there's your banner. Welcome to router 1. LD is password Cisco. And now I'm in the router. And then I can do my show start, show run, do whatever I need to do. So I gave you a little bit more than just the administrative commands, but it's not that much. All right. You need to learn how to do this, especially setting up SSH. And we didn't really tweak SSH because you can set up the authentication retries. You can set up the timeouts, right? You can tell, hey, I'll let you try 3 times to log into SSH. If not, you're going to get kicked out. Or if your session timeout right? If you're, idle, I'm going to let you be idle for 120 seconds, and after that, boom, you're kicked out as well. So we didn't do those 2 commands. But at least you've done everything else administratively. Now in the next lesson, we'll learn to go into the interfaces. I'll see you there.